and welcome back to True Crime Finding Closure. To those who are watching us for the very first time, welcome, welcome. And those who are coming back, welcome back. My name is Juliana.
I'm Barb.
And we want to thank you all for all your support and love out there as we have journeyed down this path and continue to journey down this path. We ask that you please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. This will help us continue to grow and be able to bring you more true crime stories and some other fun things that we've got planned. Some true crime event things we've got planned coming on later this year. But today we're going to bring you a very, I would say, creepy case. It was the first time I ever saw this particular case that we're going to be doing today was on Unsolved Mysteries in 1988. I was 10 years old. Oh, shush. But I was 10 years old, and I remember watching it. It was on the very famous Unsolved Mysteries TV show, hosted by then Robert Stack. And for those of you who don't know, Robert Stack was an actor way back when, who, if anybody asks, his voice and the tonality of his voice and the music that they played on Unsolved Mysteries would scare even the biggest grown-up man ever. Am I right on that, Barb?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was well known. Well, Dan, you were scared. You respected but you knew that voice.
Yeah, but with that music,
but it also meant that there was some unreal stuff happening. After the commercial.
But with the music and then his voice and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it would scare anybody. Well, I know some people, some of them, not all segments, but there are some segments that just would creep the tar out of anybody. Yeah. Anyways, this is one of those cases that was actually presented in 1988. On Unsolved Mysteries, and it was one that has stuck with me. It was just one of those cases that you always want to hear about. It scared you enough to keep it in your mind, but you never knew, you never knew anything about it. But then as I got older, I would hear little blips about it here and there. It was reviewed on Unsolved Mysteries later on with the new host.
On the documentary on that.
And documentary, and then it was so it's been around. Another, it's been in the media, and just more recently in the last couple of years has represented itself. So today, it's a case about a 17-year-old boy who vanishes after a party. Then his body is found 5 days later in a ravine about 500 yards from where the party was being held. What happened? You got to watch to find out. So let's get started, Barb, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
This week, we delve into the creepy and mysterious case of Kurt Sova. He was a 17-year-old who disappeared and several days later turned up dead under some very creepy and mysterious circumstances in 1981. The case, unfortunately, remains unsolved. On October the 28th, 1981, I was 2. Man, this case is making me feel old.
I was in England in the Air Force.
Age difference here.
Yeah.
That's why I have her here. She knows all the old farty-darty stuff, and I know all the young modern stuff. So together we work together, and it works. And you know some young modern stuff, too. I have to give her grief because I can't have coffee, so I'm trying to liven things up. Doctor's orders, no coffee, so yeah.
Fun. Talk about creepy and scary.
Mm-hmm. So on October the 28th of 1981, in Newburgh Heights, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cleveland, 3 young boys made a very gruesome discovery. The dead body was lying face up in a puddle, like in a water puddle in the middle of a ravine. The body was in a Christ-like pose, meaning arms stretched out, legs crossed like this in front, and seemed to have been deliberately placed where it was laid. Apart from some scratches and bruises, there was no sign of injury. One tennis shoe was in a pile of rocks about 12 feet away, and the other shoe has remained missing. Several hours later, the body was identified as that of 17-year-old Kurt Sova. An autopsy revealed that he had died around 24 to 36 hours before the body was found. But he had been missing for 5 days. Yet his parents had reported him missing 5 days earlier, because he'd been missing for 5. His parents reported him, so it was all within 5 days. Where was Kurt Sova during the 5 days he was missing? How did he die? Where was he killed? Stay tuned to find out. Ken and Dorothy Sova, which were Kurt's parents, would like to know where Kurt was for those 5 days. They would like to know how he died, what caused it. Dorothy is sure somebody knows because she believes that somebody put his body in the ravine on purpose. She also believes that somebody was either with him when he died or came upon him after he died, panicked, and put him there. She believes they did this because they did not want to be caught with him or a dead body, panicked, afraid, especially if it's a bunch of he's an underage kid, he's drinking drugs, whatever could have happened. They're going to panic. It's very common, and sadly, that, they panic, an accident happened, and they don't want to get caught or in trouble, so they dump the body somewhere where it's then most of the time found later. 17-year-old Kurt Sova was the son of Ken and Dorothy Sova. He was a high school junior who lived with his parents in a quiet, blue-collar neighborhood on the outskirts of Cleveland. He was the youngest of 4 sons and the closest to his parents. According to Dorothy, he never got in any trouble with the neighbors, never got in trouble at school, never got in trouble with the police. He was a pretty good, typical, normal teenage kid. And that is probably the biggest reason why nobody can understand what had happened to him, because he was such a good kid. He never did anything wrong. He always let his parents know where he was when he was going to go out or if he was going to be late. He communicated very well with his parents. So his whole disappearance and the mystery behind it makes this even more creepy and even more mysterious. And again, that's why nobody understands what happened to him. So the day that Kurt disappeared, on Friday, October the 23rd, 1981, Kurt reportedly skipped school and hung out near a local liquor store until he convinced someone to buy a bottle of Everclear. Now, anybody who knows Everclear, it is probably one of the most nastiest, strongest, grossest alcohols on the market.
But a proven paint stripper if you needed it for your furniture.
It is, yeah. And Robert's parents can actually, my husband's parents can actually agree with that one. But this stuff is nasty. And according to some of the research I found about Everclear, one little shot of Everclear can equal the same amount of alcohol in 2 to 3 bottles of beer, 1 margarita, amongst other things. This is a little shot. I'm like, oh my God. And I've had it one time in my life. I was 21. I was in college and I was a stupid kid and I had just a shot. And I can tolerate alcohol pretty well because of my lovely German and Czech background and heritage. I couldn't handle Everclear. I was, popped it. Okay, see you next week. Literally.
Right now, in the past few weeks, there have been some duet TikToks going around. Some kids say, I just bought a bottle of Everclear and I'm going to try it. And the other side is a couple of Gen Xers going, okay, let's sit back and watch this. This should be fun. Because they just, no. And then every time he says something, they just laugh. And because that's when it was popular. And that was back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. The stuff was just nasty.
It was awful.
Uh-huh. Which, when he finally did get a bottle, he spent the day drinking at a friend's house, or some people speculate it was his girlfriend's house, before venturing out to attend a carnival or like a haunted house kind of thing, because this was Halloween time. And according to friends and family, it was unusual for Kurt to drink a lot, so his behavior that day was extremely out of the ordinary for Kurt. Mm-hmm. And as a psychiatrist, when we look at things like this, when we look at cases where teenagers in particular turn up missing or dead or something like that, we look back in the days and months, and even sometimes even a year prior to the time he died, to find out if there was something there that was troubling him. Why was he doing behavior completely out of ordinary for him? Granted, it's like, maybe he just wanted to try something new. Maybe he wanted a party or something. Mm-hmm. And that's, I understand that. But this, to the point of how much alcohol, and as we get into this case even more, how much alcohol and the things that he was doing and to the level he was doing it goes beyond, I just want to try something. I just want to, it goes beyond all that. So for me, looking at this from a psychological point of view, to me, it feels he was sounds like maybe he was depressed about something. I know that he, his family moved from a farm into this community. He came from a really bad circumstance where he was picked on royally and it was horrible. And then his family moved to this new home where it was like a farm, and he seemed happy. And life seemed to be getting a lot better for him. He seemed to fit in and was beginning to get friends and be a normal teenager. But I wonder, a lot of times kids get PTSD, especially when they're bullied, extreme bullying. I wonder if that may be affecting him, or if he did like a girl and she turned him down, because of his low self-esteem. If, he said, hey, you want to go to the school dance with me or to this Halloween party carnival thing with me, and she turned him down. That could have been a trigger. You just never know, because when they're at that age, teenagers, and I know you've been a teenager at one point. I was a teenager at one point. I'm sure we've all had those moments where, peer pressure, we want to fit in, or we feel left out, whether we're a wallflower or introvert or extrovert, whatever the situation is, we all try to find that place to belong. And if we don't, and we get, especially with boys who are trying to ask a girl out and they get shot down, that can be brutal to somebody. So, yeah. Who knows? But anyways, again, like I say, it was really out of behavior for Kurt to be drinking and missing school. He never skipped school. That was the other thing that was odd. It was like as if something had happened. He was depressed or angry and was just acting out. And I'm going to take a mental, what we would call nowadays a mental health day, which turns
not healthy,
unfortunately. But on his way to the carnival, after he'd been spending a lot of time drinking this bottle of Everclear, I don't know how big there was never any detail about how big the bottle of Everclear was that he was drinking. But after he was drinking for some time at his girlfriend or friend's house, he left, and on his way to the carnival, Kurt ran into a friend of his, Samuel Carroll, who was heading to a Halloween party. Kurt decided to join Samuel instead of going to the carnival, and they attended the party at a duplex on Harvard Avenue, which coincidentally was not very far from another victim, Eugene Cavett, I think is how you say it.
K-V-E-T.
Yeah, Cavett, which we'll get into it here in a little bit. But where the house was, where the party was, and where the body was, where the Cavett was found.
It was just a couple of miles.
No, they were actually right. From what I understand, according to the police report, they were right there on Harvard Road, down a couple miles down Harvard Road.
Well, that's what I mean, a couple miles.
Yeah, on the same road.
But it was on the same road.
Yeah. So he decided to attend this party on the duplex of Harvard Avenue, about 2 miles from the house where Kurt and his parents lived. And that would be, unfortunately, when he was going to this party, that would be pretty much the last time his family and most everybody actually saw him. So.
And Kurt had known that kid when they were younger.
Yeah.
I think.
So Samuel and him had been close friends, or almost like best buds. So he trusted him. Oh, sure, let's go to this.
No. I mean the other kid that died. He had known him. They weren't that, but he knew him when they were younger.
They knew of him. We'll get more into that a little bit later on. Yeah. But yeah, it would be the last time anybody would see him. So as we know, Kirk left home for the last time on the evening of Friday, October the 23rd, late afternoon to early evening. 1 block from his house, like we said earlier, he met up with his friend Sam. Sam told him about a Halloween party taking place that night, and the two apparently had went there. We've got sketchy, we don't even know exactly if he even made it there. We do have witness reports. We have Sam saying that he was there. We've got witnesses from the party saying he was there. So it's a pretty good bet he was there, but we don't have any tangible evidence that he was actually at the party, other than witness reports. Kurt that night never returned home. Kurt rarely stayed out all night. He normally came home around 10 or 11 p.m. at the latest. He would only stay out late if his parents knew where he was, but on that night, he never came home. When Kurt didn't come home that night, his mother knew something was wrong. And this is actually a direct quote from Dorothy. It was not like him to be gone overnight. It was not like him to stay out after 10, 10:30, 11 o'clock. at the latest. And it was only when we knew where he was, and that was only when they knew where he was. This night, he just never came home and never called, which was also uncharacteristic of Kurt. So, when Kurt wasn't home by Saturday morning, Kurt's father, Ken, searched all around the neighborhood. There was absolutely no sign of Kurt. His parents began to worry. Dorothy began calling Kurt's friends while Ken continued to scour the area. They searched all the neighborhoods, all the places they figured that Kurt might be. As the day went on, no trace of Kurt was found, and then that's when Ken started to begin to worry. He thought maybe he was just being a normal teenager and hiding out at some friend's house and knew he was going to get in trouble for being, not calling in or something, which is, it can happen, and it does happen. But by Sunday, Kurt's parents finally registered him as a missing person with the Cleveland police. Meanwhile, Dorothy and her sons papered the neighborhood with missing flyers. His family and friends searched ravines, schoolyards, even dumpsters for him. They searched everywhere. There was not a stone, dumpster, trash can, anything like that was left unturned. By Sunday afternoon, Dorothy learned that Kurt had been at a party on Friday night at a duplex less than 2 miles from where the Sovas lived. According to the tip that Dorothy had received, the party was given by a woman or a girl named Susan. Kurt's friends had told her that he had been at the party Friday night in Newburgh Heights. She went to the duplex on Harvard Street where the party supposedly had been held. The woman who rented the apartment, which was supposedly her name was Susan, when Dorothy went to the door, a woman answered. However, this was not Susan. This was speculated to be Missy or Misty, I think is how you say her name. Missy. However, the woman said Susan had been out babysitting and that she was babysitting and that Susan was out working. Dorothy asked her about the party, and she said that she did not know anything about it. And then Dorothy proceeded to ask if she would have Susan call her when she got home. When Susan did return home, she did call Dorothy and told her she never saw Kurt and did not have a party. However, a pizza delivery man stated that indeed there had been a party at the duplex on Friday night. And with this information, Dorothy contacted Susan again. At this time, she admitted having a party and that, yes, Kurt had been there. But also, more than a dozen people had dropped by. Some of them were older than Kurt, some of them younger. It was just a collaboration of a bunch of kids having a good time. Most of them were people that Kurt had never met or didn't know. Debbie, a.k.a. Susan, because there were some reports out there that her name was actually Debbie, and the name Susan was just a fake name that she had been using in order to keep herself hidden, I guess. I'm not sure. But Debbie, a.k.a. Susan, told Dorothy that more than a dozen people had been at the party. Most were older than Kurt, and most people had never met. She said Kurt had been drinking heavily. Many said that Kurt was not much of a drinker. Eventually, Dorothy, again, speaks to the delivery man who verifies that the party at the duplex, and then also verified that Kurt had been there. And then when she was armed with this information, that's when she decided to confront everybody, who finally admits that there was a party, that Kurt was there. But she also admitted, this is Susan, that she saw Kurt leave. After hearing rumors about the Halloween party and Kurt being there, Dorothy actually went to the duplex herself, and she speaks to one of the other roommates, Missy, who also tells her that there was no party and she didn't see Kurt that night. And then Debbie and Clayton, who actually were supposedly the owners of this building, were not there. So we have a Susan, a Debbie, a Missy.
Debbie and Clayton were brother and sister.
Yeah.
They're brother and sister.
So for all we know, Debbie could be Susan, or Susan. We don't know. And so, again, this is when it starts the intrigue of
why
are you lying? Was he at your house? Yeah. Did you see him? Yeah. Was he drinking? Yeah. Okay, then admit that. Don't lie about it. Yeah. But with their consistent lies and stuff.
Now, granted, he and his friend were underage, and everybody else there was older. So that could be why they were, trying to disavow knowledge of a kid being there.
So, possibly. Don't know. Susan, however, told Dorothy that Kirk had been drinking extremely heavily. He had mainly been drinking Everclear, a very potent, like I said earlier, a very potent liquor that has been banned in several states because it is so bad. Those who knew Kurt said he wasn't a drinker, and that his slight build added to the low tolerance for alcohol. Rumors speculated that Kurt had started drinking Everclear at his girlfriend's house earlier that evening, and then, of course, if he's continuing this, and with how potent, how nasty this stuff is, by the time it got, later in the evening into the night, and he's continuing to drink this, you gotta know he's got to be 3 sheets to the wind, as my mama would say.
I don't understand how he got to the second sip of it, judging by those 2 TikToks that I watched. And these guys reacted like they had just drank poison that was laced with,
I don't know. That stuff is
ghost peppers or something.
It's ghastly. It is so bad. There was rumors that it's like almost drinking like a sip of gasoline or something. No. It's just that bad. It is so bad. But he would be extremely intoxicated with that Everclear. If he's continuing to drink that Everclear, he's got to be intoxicated at this party. It's just, there's not any way around it. Yeah. Dorothy was very shocked to hear that he'd been drinking because, again, as I've repeated myself here, he wasn't known to drink. And I wanted to make sure, he wasn't a drinker. He didn't drink. So for him to drink all this Everclear and to actually eventually become drunk, and to witnesses saw him drunk, was very much out of character and out of the ordinary for Kurt. But she also believes that if everyone else at the party was drinking, he probably was as well. She never knew him or his normal friends to drink, but most of the people there at this party were not his normal friends. They were almost entirely a new group of people. While at the party, witnesses say that Kurt becomes sick or disruptive, knocking over things. This could be from a high level of alcohol that he was drinking, considering everybody at the party was drinking Everclear. Other people at the party were also seeing Kurt knocking over things, either because he couldn't hold himself upright, or because he was emotional over something. Which, to me, clues me in what I said earlier, that maybe he was depressed or sad or frustrated or upset about something. But to calm the situation, Samuel proceeds to take Kurt outside to get some fresh air. Now, again, this is Ohio. This is October. It's cold. It's chilly outside. It's about 56 degrees. And Samuel and Kirk are just wearing like the light t-shirts. Samuel leaves Kirk against the chain link fence, kind of leans him against it. And within about 2 to 3 minutes, he ran in to go get their coats. And when he came back out, he was, like I said, was gone. Like 2 or 3 minutes, Kurt was gone. We were out there about 20 to 30 minutes, and it was cold out there. We were both in t-shirts. Carol told the media. I went in to go get our jackets upstairs. I got the jackets, came right back down, and he wasn't there. I was only upstairs for 2 or 3 minutes, Carol concluded. This is a direct quote from him. When Kurt was gone, Sam briefly looked around for Kurt in case Kurt had simply just wandered away and was struggling and had collapsed somewhere. But because it was such a short time had passed, there was no sign of Kurt anywhere. So you'd figure, because he ran out, came right back down, and he was looking, and because of Kurt's supposed drunken state, you would think you would see Kurt, shuffling along somewhere. Yeah. Or collapsed somewhere. But there was no sign of him anywhere. And because of the short time, you'd think, hello, he'd be around. Samuel searched a nearby warehouse parking lot, very close to where Kurt's body was later found. Samuel's statement to the police is, I can only guess that someone he knew picked him up because it happens that fast. Someone had to have picked him up in a car because he just was too drunk and too intoxicated to be able to walk on his own. It was just, there's no way. He could hardly keep himself up in an upright position. Because of this, Samuel assumes Kurt went home and simply goes back to the party. So that's pretty much, Sam thought he got a ride home. And, okay, he's safe. I'm going to go back and continue to enjoy myself. But those who knew Kurt, who really, truly knew Kurt, said that just didn't sound right. Dorothy talked to, a lot of his friends, and all of them kind of agreed that he wasn't a drinker. He didn't do that stuff. He wasn't that type of kid to, go out and drink. This is actually a direct quote from Samuel about the night, the last time, or would prove eventually to be the last time that people who knew Kurt would see him. This is this is actually a quote from Dorothy. The fellow that Kurt went to the party with told me that Kurt had become ill. They took him outside for some air, and because it was a chilly night, he said he went upstairs to get Kurt's jacket and left him hanging on the fence. He said he went up to get the jacket and came back down, and Kurt was gone. That's when this is when Sam said, I think I became very hysterical at that point. I thought, oh my God, something happened to him at that party or in between the party and home. Only I didn't, in my wildest dreams, expect him to turn up dead a few days later. Sam, Kurt's friend, who went with him to the party, told the family that Kurt continued to drink, began to stumble around and knock things over, and then became ill. Susan asked Sam to take Kurt outside. And the reason I'm repeating this is because there is some speculation that Sam did it himself. And there are other speculation that it was actually Susan, or a.k.a. Debbie, who asked him to take him outside. There's, it's like the hearsay, he said, she said, we said kind of scenario. But around 9:30 p.m., it took Kurt out front so that he could get some air because it was a chilly night. He went to go, like I said earlier, went to go get his jacket and came back outside and he was gone. They searched and they assumed that they had walked home. And again, this was, not only Sam, but this was also Susan that said had come out with Sam the second time. So this is just like a second report of what happened with Sam. And this time it was with Susan was also involved in this one. The first time it wasn't with Sam, which is just Sam. Now it was with Sam and Susan. Who knows? But he searched the surrounding area and did not find Kurt. He assumed that Kurt had walked home, and later on the jacket was ended up being found at the duplex, Kurt's jacket. So in Sam's own words, this is what was said about the last time he saw Kurt. The fellow that Sam said that Kurt went to the party and had become ill. I took him outside. It was a chilly night. Went upstairs to get the jacket. He said the jacket and came back down, and Kurt was gone. That's when I think I became hysterical, and I thought, my God, something happened to him at the party or in between the party and home. Only I didn't, in my wildest dreams, expect him to turn up dead. These are his exact words. I know I repeated myself again.
Dorothy's words.
No, those are actually Sam's words. The first time was, what Dorothy had repeated what Sam said, and the second time was what Sam said. As you can see, there's so many different, in that particular time frame, there are 3 or 4 different versions of it. One with Susan, one without Susan. One where Sam did this, one where Sam did that. And a lot of statements were made. Dorothy said, this is what Sam said, and this is directly what Sam said. So it's one of those scenarios like, okay, what's the truth? Because there's a lot of people lying, as you'll see as we get into more into this, lying throughout this case, and things weren't done like they were supposed to. Makes you stop and wonder and think, okay, how can, it's one scene, one scenario, how can there be so many different takes on it? And that's what really kind of makes it stand out, that, something isn't right, that there is some shenanigans going on. So, we shall see. So Kurt left home for the last time on Friday, October the 23rd, late in the afternoon. About a block from his home, he met up with his friend Sam, who told him about a Halloween party that was taking place that night, and the two apparently went there. Kurt, unfortunately, never returned home. Kurt rarely stayed out all night. He normally came home around 10 or 11 at the latest, and he would only stay out that late if his parents knew where he was. But on that night, he never came home. When Kurt didn't come home that night, his mother knew something was drastically wrong. It was not like, this is a direct quote from her, it's not like him to be gone overnight. It was not like him to stay out after 10, 10:30, 11, or 10 o'clock at the latest. It was only that was only when they knew where he was. He just never came home. We never knew where he was or what happened to him. When Kurt wasn't home by Saturday morning, Kurt's father, Ken, searched for him around the neighborhood. There was no sign of Kurt. Kurt's parents, were worried, obviously, and Dorothy began calling his friends while Ken continued to scour the area. They searched all the neighborhoods, all the places that he figured Kurt would be, and as the day went on, no trace excuse me, of Kurt was ever found. And that's when Ken started to become worried. He thought at first that, oh, he's being a typical teenager and out, running around doing typical teenager kind of things. So by Sunday, Kurt's parents would eventually go to register him as a missing person with the Cleveland Police Department. Meanwhile, Dorothy and her other sons papered the neighborhood with missing flyers. His friends and family searched ravines, schoolyards, and even dumpsters for him. And they left no rock unturned, no home unsearched. I mean, they looked everywhere for him. Nothing. By Sunday afternoon, Dorothy learned that Kurt had been at a party that night at a duplex less than 2 miles from where the Sovas lived. According to the tip that Dorothy received, the party was given by a girl named Susan, which possibly could be Debbie or Missy. There were like 3 or 4 different names that were shooting around of who actually lived in this duplex. And based on the evidence that we looked at and all the stuff we've looked at and research we've done, we could never pinpoint exactly who lived in this duplex. There's speculation as to who lived in it, but never a confirmation as to who actually did. But again, according to the tip that Dorothy received, the party was given by someone by the name of Susan. Kurt's friends told her that the party had been in Newburgh Heights, and she went to the duplex on Harvard Street where the party had been held. The woman who had rented the apartment, whose name was apparently Susan, when Dorothy went to the door, a woman answered. However, it was not Susan, and the woman said that she was babysitting and that Susan was working. Dorothy asked about the party, but she said she did not know anything about it, and Dorothy asked her if she would have Susan call her when she got home. When Susan returned home, she did call Dorothy and told her that she never saw Kurt and that he was not at the party and did not have a party and he wasn't at a party. There was nothing there. Eventually, Dorothy speaks to a pizza delivery man who verifies the party at the duplex because he had delivered a bunch of pizzas there several times, apparently, throughout the night. And so, armed with this new information, Dorothy confronts Debbie, a.k.a. Susan, a.k.a. Missy, or whoever this person is, again, and this person finally admits that there was a party and that Kurt was there, but she says that she saw him leave. Okay. Dorothy had contacted Susie yet again after she admitted having the party and said that Kurt had been there. And then after hearing more rumors, she finally said, okay, that does it. I'm going to go there. I'm going to see what I can find. So she actually went to the duplex herself. So she contacted Susan and went to the duplex on multiple occasions, multiple times. So this time she spoke to Missy, or what claims to be Missy, and she tells Dorothy that there was no party and that she didn't see Kirk that night, and that Debbie and Clayton, who were the supposed owners, were not present. So here she is getting a third story from a third individual, the babysitter, Susan, and now Missy. So as you can see, there are a lot of lies started and rumors starting already. Susan, in one of the many conversations that Dorothy had with Susan had told Dorothy that Kurt had been drinking very heavily and had been mainly drinking Everclear, which is a very potent liquor, as we had spoken before, that has been banned in several states because of its potency and how strong this stuff is. I actually was speaking to somebody I know, and I found out that, oh my gosh, one little shot of Everclear equals 2 beers, 1 margarita. That's a lot of alcohol for one little shot to equal those 3 drinks, if you think about it, you know? And for him to be drinking that, holy crap.
And also, it tastes so nasty. Why would anybody drink it voluntarily?
People say that it tastes like lighter fluid.
Yeah.
But you want to drink lighter fluid? Yeah.
I don't drink. I tasted beer. I thought, why do people drink that? It's nasty. And I asked my brother. He said, oh, it's something you got to get used to. And I thought, why would I drink something so nasty to get used to it?
I will agree with her on beer. Yeah.
I have a sensitivity to alcohol. I can taste it in any drink. Somebody's, here, taste this. I taste it. Yeah, it's orange flavored alcohol. It's so and so flavored alcohol.
Yeah.
I don't like. I don't. Yeah.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But it just surprises me that he was drinking this liquid that he was drinking. And he, for someone who apparently was not much of a drinker and was very, slender built, added to that low tolerance of alcohol. So it was no wonder that he was getting drunk, especially drinking that stuff, and then supposedly continuing to drink it throughout the night. I'm thinking, my God, this guy has to be 3 sheets to the wind.
I'm thinking a slight building like that. How did he ever make it out of his girlfriend's house if he started drinking it there?
Good point. See, this is what I'm talking about. And for those of you who grew up in the 80s and the 70s, know what I'm talking about when I mention Everclear. The stuff is nasty.
It sounds so ethereal, like an evergreen or a clear brook and stuff. And no.
Like she just was saying, there were a bunch of rumors that Kirk had started drinking the Everclear at his girlfriend or friend's house earlier that evening, late afternoon. So, and like she said, how did he get from there to there?
Yeah, when you start drinking Everclear, you don't go anywhere else. You're just there.
Yeah, I mean, it's so makes you stop and wonder: was he really drinking Everclear, or was he not? Was he not drinking as much as they claim he was? Don't know. Dorothy was shocked to hear that his drinking, or that he was drinking, because he was again not known to drink. She believes that everyone else at the party must have been drinking, and he probably, as peer pressure to join in or to be part of the crowd, was drinking as well. She never knew him or his normal friends to drink. So, and most of the people that we know were not his normal friends. So it was basically an entire new group of people. And a lot of times, and I know I've done it, when you're in a new group of people, you want to
fit
in, belong, you're going to drink. And maybe he did it to excess, amongst other things. While at the party, it was said by a lot of witnesses that Kurt becomes sick or disruptive. This could be from the high level of alcohol he was drinking. It could possibly be the drugs that some people say that he might have been partaking in. And consider everyone at the party was either drinking or doing drugs, and most of them were drinking Everclear, was the alcohol of choice, which is why I'm still going back to the whole why Everclear. Ugh. There's so many other things that taste so much better. Ugh. Sorry, I mean, it's when I heard that, I was like, ew, 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 ew. I mean, I've had it one time in my life, and once was very sufficient, and it was just a sip. I think it was actually, if I remember correctly, it was with my brother Scott, and it was just a sip, just a little sip. And I looked at him, I said, "What is this, lighter fluid?" It was so bad. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. You can text me later if I'm wrong in that. But I think it was you who I had the sip with, but I can't remember. Anyways.
Tell us hear from your mom. You were letting her drink Everclear? Didn't matter if you were 30.
Yeah, so sorry, Scott. My mom's probably going to, my brother is probably going to be yelling at you. Anywho, but other people at the party said that Kirk was knocking over things, and either because he couldn't hold himself upright or because he was emotional over something, which fits in line to what I said earlier. Because he doesn't drink and he's suddenly drinking, cut school, and he's doing all these things, it appeared that maybe he might be depressed or going through something that caused him to act out or do some bunch of things out of the ordinary, which is what we look at when we're, as a forensic psychologist, what we look for in determining certain crime scenes and things like that. We look for behaviors and something that abnormal that sends a flag or a trigger saying, "Oh, we need to look here. Something isn't right. Why is this doing this?" And sometimes it could be something as innocent as he was just trying to fit into belong. Others, it could be he was depressed. He got let down by a girlfriend, or he asked somebody on a date and she turned him down, or got bullied, or there's so many different reasons it could be. So who knows? But again, he couldn't keep himself up, and so to calm the situation, Samuel, his friend that went with him to the party, proceeds to take Kurt outside to get some fresh air. Now, because this is October, Midwest, up in the north part of the country, it's cold. It was very chilly that night. It was about 56 degrees outside, and Samuel and Kurt were just plain t-shirts. Samuel leaves Kurt against a chain link fence that was near the duplex, and when he returns about 2 or 3 minutes later, Kurt is gone. He's like, "We were out there about 20 or 30 minutes, and of course it was cold out here." This is a direct quote from Samuel. We were out there for about 20 or 30 minutes, and it was very cold out there. We were both in T-shirts, Samuel told the media. I then went in to go upstairs and get our jackets. I got the jackets and went back down, and he wasn't there. And I was only upstairs for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then when I came back, he was gone. Sam said he briefly looked around for Kurt in case Kurt had simply wandered away or had collapsed somewhere, because in the short period of time you'd think, you could see him shuffling along or collapsed on the ground or, something like that. Something, the old town drunk motif kind of thing. But he didn't see anybody. He didn't see Kurt anywhere, no hide or hair of Kurt anywhere. Samuel also searched a nearby warehouse parking lot. It was very close to where Kurt's body is eventually found. Samuel's statement to police is, I can only guess that somebody he knew picked him up because it happened so fast. Someone had to pick him up in a car because he was incapable of walking because of the level of intoxicity, whether it was from alcohol or drugs, who knows. He couldn't function. I mean, he was literally the term of falling down drunk. It's literally, from what Sam describes, is what Kurt was. So somebody had to pick him up. There was no way he could have walked. But Samuel assumes he went home and simply goes back into the party. Sam assumed that Kurt had gotten a ride home because he obviously couldn't walk. So, Dorothy, in her journey and her investigating, did talk to Sam. And this is her recollection of what she heard from Sam. She said, that fellow that Kurt went to the party with told me Kurt had become ill. They took him outside for some air, and because it was a chilly night, he said he went upstairs to get Kurt's jacket and then left him hanging on the fence. He said he went up there, got his jacket, came back down, and Kurt was gone. That is when I became hysterical. I thought, my God, something happened to him at that party or in between the party and home. Only I didn't, in my wildest dreams, expect him to turn up dead a few days later. One of the other scenarios of that particular situation was presented by Susan, the person who supposedly was throwing the party. And it was presented by Susan to Dorothy. And this is what this was. It was almost the same as the previous scenario with Sam, but with the added addition of Susan doing more. Here is the scenario. Sam, Kurt's friend who went with him to the party, says Kurt continued to drink. He began to stumble around, knocking things over, and became ill. Susan asked Sam to take Kurt outside about 9:30. He and Susan took Kurt out front so he could get some air. Because it was a chilly night, they went upstairs, this is Susan and Sam, upstairs to get Kurt's jacket and left him hanging on the fence. When they came back outside a few minutes later, Kurt was gone. They searched the surrounding area, but did not find Kurt. They assumed Kurt had walked home, and they returned to the party. Now, as you can see with this second scenario, you can see Susan appears to be changing her story, or even lying about what truly transpired that night to protect herself, and protect herself maybe, but unfortunately, and I think you probably would agree, it makes her look even more guilty. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, okay, you say he wasn't there, then you say he was, then you say she changed her story an awful lot. And that makes the person look suspicious. It's like, okay, you know more, you're trying to protect yourself, or what a lot of people call CYA.
First, there was no party.
And now there's no party. So it changed so many times. It's like, okay, suit yourself. Now, we believe in the first scenario is what truly happened. It was just Sam alone that dealt with Kurt, took him outside, got his coat. That just seems to fit the scenario a little bit more. And on a side note, Kurt's coat was eventually found at the duplex a few days later. So when Dorothy heard Sam's story and then heard Susan's story, she became hysterical. She was certain something had happened to him, either at the party or on the way home. However, she as well as everybody else, didn't expect for Kurt to turn up dead just a couple of days later. So on Wednesday, October the 28th, 5 days after Kurt left home, his body was found in a ravine behind a warehouse on Harvard Street, right about 500 yards from where the party happened. He was from the duplex where the party happened and where he was last seen alive. Lieutenant Robert Karras of the Newburgh Heights Police Department believes that Kurt's body was dumped there. And whoever dumped him knew the area and knew that people would go back there. So they would eventually, within a certain amount of time, he would be found. So it was pretty obvious that he was dumped there and that it was done on purpose. Police combed the area for clues. Sort of. You'll hear more about that from Barb in a little bit, about how much the police actually did or didn't do.
Right.
Anyways, the police apparently combed the area for clues. They found Kurt's left shoe wedged in some rocks less than 12 feet from where the body was found. They were never able to locate his right shoe. His body was taken to the Cuyahoga County.
Yeah.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
No.
Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office for an autopsy. The coroner determined that he died 24 to 36 hours before his body was found, which meant that he had been alive for at least 3 days after the party. What the coroner could not determine, however, was the exact cause of death. There was some speculation and rumor that there had busted capillaries in his eyes that was part of the autopsy report. I cannot confirm or deny this, but I do know that when you have busted capillaries in your eyes, that means that your body was frozen. And a lot of times
56 degrees isn't that frozen, or even lower than. So.
Yeah, so he had to be put into a freezer or something, maybe. And then, maybe that was when they hit him from Kurt's dad. I don't know. But I do know enough to know, okay, if in fact that is in his eyes, broken capillaries, this is a more ominous situation than what's presenting itself. And it already is an ominous situation to begin with. Former Chief Deputy Coroner Lester Adelson says that on the basis of things that they saw, and equally important, the things that they did not see, but was absent, they felt that Kurt had died from instantaneous physiological death. So, what?
Yeah.
I asked my mother about that, what that means, and she's like,
Mom's a nurse.
My mother is an RN, a nurse, and my mom was like, what? Wait a minute. What? The instantaneous and physiological really
physiologic death. Yeah. No.
It's like, huh? What? How does that even work? So my mom said that's usually one of those things, sometimes in the medical field, where they don't have a reason or a cause. It's like the dump all thing. And they have sometimes the dump all diagnosis, where a patient comes in with a lot of different symptoms, but they don't have a one set cause for it. Like, oh, well, it's this. It has to be in lupus. It has to be
House.
Yeah, in House. Oh, it's lupus. There's always, in the TV show House, there's always lupus. Or it has to be metabolic syndrome, or it has to be one of these diseases, which are legit diseases. I don't want anyone to think I'm making fun of them. They are legit. But a lot of times, unfortunately, in the medical community, use them as a dump all.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel this cause of death was a dump all. And it was a cop-out because he didn't know how to do it, and he was needing to give an answer. And so he gave a really pathetic answer, in my opinion. And the manner of death was signed out as probable accidental. Any Bueller? Any takers for that one? Probably accidental? Okay. So the whole autopsy was almost a joke in a lot of ways. It's like, that tells us nothing. He says that they determined this, the probable accidental. They say they determined this because they eliminated everything else. Well, it's nothing else. It has to be this.
Did they check to see if he was bitten by a wombat?
Oh, no.
I don't think so.
I'm like, okay. Kurt had not been beaten or traumatized in any way. He had a blood alcohol of 0.11. Now, mind you, this was the day his body was found and the autopsy was done was almost 5 days later from when he disappeared.
5 days
So-
post Everclear.
The fact that he still had any alcohol in his system, one, shows how much alcohol he had been drinking that night, and he probably did have alcohol poisoning.
It
But-
preserved his body.
Yeah, no kidding. But my question is, where was he those days that he was missing? Why didn't he come home? Was he suffering that much from alcohol poisoning? And I know that sometimes when you drink a lot, and this is for little trivia for you out there, when you drink a lot to the point where you get alcohol poisoning, you can actually lapse into a coma for days. And that might have was what happened, and died downstairs, and then they panicked and dumped his body. That seems like the most logical explanation.
Yeah, because you couldn't imagine him leaving with that downstairs, because they had a basement downstairs. And maybe he wandered back in and took a wrong turn and went down in the basement. That's why they didn't see him elsewhere, outside. So that's a possibility.
But that also explained why he still had alcohol in his system when they did the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But which is not nearly high enough to end his life. But if he had been that much, which I anticipate based on witness reports and how he was acting, he was probably, in the way he couldn't walk, he couldn't stand up, he was at the point of alcohol poisoning.
Yeah.
There was just no question with his body and the intake. And then having still 4 days later or 5 days later, still alcohol in his system, that just goes to show he had a lot of alcohol in his system. I mean, a lot. But as also continuing on with the autopsy, he had no hard drugs in his system. He had no pre-existing natural diseases. Adelson said this was diagnosis by exclusion. Well, wasn't this, or then, well, it has to be this,
No trauma, other than minor bruises and surface scratches. Mm-hmm. He had no sign of anything.
Nope. But after talking to my mother, there are tests that, and of course, again, you have to remember this is 1981. But now there are tests where you can test somebody, and there are things that they now know to look for in a person has alcohol poisoning in their brains. There are certain things in blood vessels and stuff. I don't know all the terminology. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical doctor, but my mom was going into it. That you can run tests and you can actually find out, okay, yeah, this person did die or had alcohol poisoning at one point.
Oh,
and
shoot, they probably check the hair follicles and see how far out. Okay, he's pickled this far. Yeah, that's been,
Who knows? But there are tests now, that you can determine alcohol poisoning and how much and when and stuff that they didn't have back then. So I would highly recommend, if the family's watching this, I would recommend those blood samples and hair samples be retested.
Yeah.
I really would. Dorothy could not believe the coroner's office could not tell her how Kurt died. She believes that they did that to give her some peace of mind. She wants to know what actually happened to him. However, she is not sure she wants to know who put him in the ravine. She says she could not do that to someone's animal, let alone a human being. She just wants to know what happened to her son. And as a mom of a son, I would want to know. I would want to know what happened to my baby. That's my baby. I carry that kid. I want to know what happened to him. Is that old phrase growing up? I brought you into this world. I'm going to take you out of this world.
Nobody else can.
Nobody else can. So who did it? But she loved her kid. She wants to know. And, and under all the circumstances that she discovers and things like that, I would want to know too. I really, really would. After the initial shock of Kurt's death had abated a little bit, Dorothy began to piece together a series of very strange events that occurred in the next 5 days when he was missing. Now, some of these I'm going to discuss, and there are some more that Barb will discuss when she talks here in just a few minutes. But David Trisnick, a friend of Kurt's, claims that on Monday, 3 days after Kurt disappeared, he saw Kurt and another boy who he did not recognize walking along a busy street less than a mile from the Sova home and kind of near where the duplex is. David was on his way to a job interview when he spotted Kurt. David pulled over to offer to him a ride home. At the same time, a van pulled up and Kurt yelled out, "Franco!" He and the other boy ran over to the van and got into it. David did not know at the time that Kurt was missing, and he says that if he had known that, he would have tried to do something. Drive after the van or something along those lines. But it was 2 days later, Kurt was found dead. This is a statement that David Trusnick, his actual quote. I pulled over to offer Kurt a ride at this point, and a van pulled up, and Kurt yelled out, "Franco." They both ran over to the van, and they got in. I didn't know that Kurt was missing. If I had known he was missing, there probably would have been something that I could have done. I could have followed the van. I could have stopped the van. I could have stopped Kurt. I don't know. But I didn't know. 2 days later, he was found dead, and that was the last time I saw him, was walking down that street. 5 days after the party, Kurt's body was found in that ravine just 500 yards from Susan's duplex. Lieutenant Robert Karras from the Newburgh Heights Police said this. It's our belief that the body was dumped out there, and whoever the person or persons were knew the area and knew the people would go back there, and the kids played back there, and eventually within a certain amount of time he would be found. I know I had said this quote earlier, but I wanted to reiterate it because of the bizarreness of this whole case and how much the police didn't really care. That it was, he'll be found.
Boys will be boys.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, they searched the area. They found his shoe. They could never found the other shoe. He was again, it was determined he died 24 to 36 hours before he was found. And the deputy couldn't determine the exact cause of death. Just so much stuff, which Barbara's going to get all into here in just a little bit. They were signed up. This is a direct quote from the coroner's office, Dr. Lester Adelson. He said the manner of death in this particular case was signed out as probable accidental. He hadn't been beaten in any way. He hadn't been traumatized in any way. He didn't have enough alcohol to end his life. He had no pre-existing natural disease. And as Sherlock Holmes said, you eliminate all other possibilities, that which remains is the truth. This was a diagnosis by exclusion. And Barbara's going to get all into that stuff and how ludicrous that quote truly is at that time. But it's like they didn't care. And the fact that he said he didn't have enough alcohol, at that moment he didn't, but that doesn't mean that 3 or 4 days later when he did, and people saw him drinking, where was he? Hello. Dorothy Sova wasn't buying any of it. And Dorothy, may she rest in peace up there, I wouldn't be buying it either. Would you?
No.
See? She said, I didn't believe they couldn't tell me how Kurt died. For peace of mind, I wanted to know what happened to my kid. They had no care. However, there would be another lead. While police did not investigate this lead, Kurt's father, Ken, went to the duplex and saw someone had been staying in the basement, but they were no longer there, and Ken found no definitive signs that Kurt had been there. On the very day Kurt's body was found, Dorothy got an early morning phone call from Susan, this is the woman supposedly threw the party. She told me that someone had been sleeping in her basement and perhaps it might be Kurt. I thought, why are you calling me now after lying to me so many times? I didn't know whether to believe her or not to believe her. And then after that, we had Sam saying one scenario and then we had Susan saying another scenario. Lesser of two evils, A or B, apples or oranges. Who do you trust? Do you trust or do you not trust? Kurt's father, Ken, went to Susan's house, and this is his direct quote. I went down to the basement. I thought maybe he was sick or hurt, and I figured if I got down there and found him, maybe I could do something for him. There I found a cot that looked like somebody had slept in it. After searching the whole basement, I didn't find anybody in there. I had no idea if it was Kurt or not that had been sleeping there. All I know is that somebody did sleep in that cot that night, and then when I got there, they were gone. Dorothy thinks she knows what happens. This is another direct quote from her. I think Kurt was there. I think he was already dead in that cot. But I think they panicked, got rid of his body in that ravine that was just 500 yards away. But Dorothy and Ken are certain of one thing. 24 hours before his body was found, Kurt was not in the ravine. Ken says that he had carefully searched there twice and found nothing.
Yeah, 2 different days.
I know he wasn't there the day that I was searching. They must have dumped him off that evening. I looked around, and I'm sure that if Kurt was down there, I would have noticed his bright yellow T-shirt that he had on against any of that terrain. You'd think. Mm-hmm. 3 months after Kurt died, the mystery of his death even intensified even more. The body of Eugene Kevitt, a boy Kurt used to know, was found in another ravine on the same street, just 2.5 miles down the road from where Kurt's body was discovered. Eugene Kevitt was found in the ravine, not far, as I said, not far.
We have a theme of ravine.
A ravine, not far from where Kurt was found, missing a shoe. The same shoe that Kurt was missing, posed in almost the same way that Kurt was posed.
And the sock was missing too,
And the
at
sock
least
was missing.
according to the show.
Yeah, Eugene Kevitt, who was familiar with Kurt, they'd gone to school when they were younger, but like in high school, you're like, oh, I know that person, but I don't know them.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Who was familiar with Kurt, was found dead a couple months after Kurt. This was like 2 months after Kurt had died. It was found dead. Both boys had been missing a few days before they'd been found. Showed lack of physical damage. Eugene's right shoe was also never found. Both boys had been missing and then turned up dead. Eugene's right shoe was never found, and his left shoe was, again, off in rocks like Kurt's shoe was found. Eugene's case is still open and classified as another probable accident. New investigators were assigned to both cases, and hopefully they can determine how Kurt died and also how Eugene Kevitt died. Kurt's family had indicated that the local police did not take Kurt's disappearance very seriously and failed to do a thorough investigation. Assertions that were later supported when the police chief pleaded guilty to dereliction of duty related to allegations of gambling, corruption, and another police officer pleaded guilty to brutalizing suspects while he was already serving a prison term for drug conviction. Now here is Barb. She'll go into more detail about all of that and some theories and other things that are happening. So, and the police's non-involvement.
Right.
Here you go, Barb. Take it away.
Okay. Bad cops in Newburgh Heights. All listed were part of the investigation of Kurt Sova case. For years, Kurt's family feared that Newburgh Heights police were bungling the investigation. Their suspicions seemed to be confirmed when, over the course of several years, several officers were arrested on charges ranging from falsifying credentials to drug trafficking. Lieutenant Karras, who headed the investigation, was later discovered to be a drug addict who allegedly assaulted handcuffed prisoners. He allegedly took one prisoner to the warehouse near where Kurt's body was found and tried to fight with him. In 1991, he was convicted of attacking the prisoners and given a sentence of 6 to 15 years. He denied being involved in Kurt's death. The Cleveland police, the county sheriff's and prosecutor's office, and the FBI later looked into the case. Each agency felt that the Newburgh Heights police conducted a poor investigation. For example, no photos were taken of Kurt's body at the scene. I mean, basic
crime investigation 101. Hello.
Yeah.
You take pictures of the crime scene and everything, so they can have a good idea of where the body was found, how it was found, anything that was surrounding the body, and anything like 100 yards off the body.
I mean, chalk outline, anything. It could have done that with a stick. Nothing. No search of the duplex where Kurt was last seen was made. No written statements were found from the partygoers. They also rejected an offer of help from Cleveland police shortly after Kurt's death. I don't understand why. According to Dorothy, they did not interview many of the people who came to her with leads. She claims that Lieutenant Karras played her off as a mother who would not accept her son's death. Cold.
So the Cleveland police were offering to assist. Hey, we'll give you help because it was becoming known. We'll help you assist you on this, and they kind of like, yeah, we don't need it.
We don't need it. Which is another case of a lot of small town police that, no, we want to do it, and they refuse to call in the FBI because, no, we want to get credit for finding it.
Yeah.
And 40 years? Okay, the detective Robert Karras, age 42 in 1991, ex-police detective serving a 15-year state prison term on 5 federal charges of mistreating suspects in custody in 1989 and 1990. Karras was previously convicted in December of 90 of 76 counts of aggravated drug trafficking and 76 counts of illegal processing of drug documents. He was convicted of forging prescriptions for Percocet, an addictive painkiller. He was fired in January 1990 after being suspended during the drug abuse investigations. Now, former police chief James Lucas, after Dorothy had been going to the party duplex on multiple occasions and supposedly disturbing the people that lived there, he ordered Dorothy to stay away from them, stay away from the party duplex or get charged for harassment. They weren't investigating, she was. He was banned from police work for falsifying paperwork credentials to hire a dispatcher. In 1984, he was given a suspended jail sentence after pleading guilty to dereliction of duty. Lucas had been accused of allowing gambling at a 1982 party where he had been working off-duty as a security guard. Also charged with bribery, complicity in gambling, and operating a gambling house. All charges dropped except dereliction of duty in plea bargaining. Indicted along with 20 others in an investigation that resulted in indictment of 3 mayors. This was not a good thing. And 11 others. The mayors were awaiting trial at the time of this press article that I got this information in 84. So I don't know what finally came with that. 1984. Well, yeah. Also, heavy speculation regarding Kurt Sova autopsy results. As Juliana mentioned earlier about the autopsy report, it itself is suspicious, and the statements from the coroner and the medical examiner revolving around it are equally suspicious. Chief Coroner Dr. Lester Edelson, realizing Kurt's case needed more help, we think that he possibly called in a medical examiner friend, but autopsy was very inconclusive, and he was the one who referenced the Sherlock Holmes quote, which was in that the
Unsolved Mysteries.
Unsolved Mysteries. I just put UM. regarding we eliminated everything else, and as Sherlock Holmes said, you eliminate all other possibilities, and that which remains is the truth. Diagnosis by elimination, which in his thing said instantaneous physiological death, probable accident cause. Actual cause unknown. Time of death 24 to 36 hours before he was found. That was 3 days after the party. The whole thing is he's resting his decision on a mythological detective, and that's how he's explaining away the autopsy. That's just crazy.
And it's based on non-factual evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. Because even the cause of death is extremely far-fetched and absurd based on the factual evidence that we have. I mean, it's like we have fact that there are certain things happening, and they're saying, oh, no, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
Yeah.
Huh? Because they don't have another better answer to give because they never properly investigated to begin with.
Because of his missing shoe, he froze to death. So it's about as logical. Mm-hmm. Okay, and the crazy prophet. If you've watched that show, the Unsolved Mysteries, this one's a biggie to me. Kurt's mom, Dorothy, posted missing flyers around area businesses. On Monday, a homeless-looking guy stopped in the Slavic Village record store, pointed to the flyer in the window, saying to the manager, "You might as well take that down since he will be found dead in 2 days, and no one will know the cause of death." And he left. Yeah. Several days later, on Thursday morning, he left flowers at a neighboring store for her, but she wasn't opening that.
For Judy.
With a note, "Roses are red, sky is blue. He was found, you will be too." He showed up a little later and she called the police. Kurt wasn't found until later that day. So nobody's seen. So that poem should have been red flag. The two officers showed up and chatted with him in their patrol car. They deemed him harmless, local homeless guy, and let him go. He disappeared, and he was never seen or heard from again, seemingly to have vanished off the face of the earth. Very sus. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this could be why that was kind of casual. It was the Cleveland PD that responded to her call. So maybe they hadn't got the manager's call, Judy's call. So maybe they hadn't gotten the word about Kurt being missing yet. In any case, Kurt's body wasn't found until later that day. Maybe if CPD were more informed about Kurt's case, they might have kept Prophet Man around, at least until his identity was confirmed before releasing him. I read that the Prophet Man was from Detroit and visiting his sister in town. There was a theory that he might have been a local informant for the Newburgh Heights PD, which could be why he got a friendly chat and let go. If not, he gave a bogus name and sister story. An older couple lived at her address later. That was later revealed. So, there was no sister. One fantastical theory about Prophet Man was that he was homeless and he would brag to anyone who would listen, police included, about having access to bodies being flown into Cleveland Hopkins International Airport, and that he stole their shoes. Alrighty then. Too bad they didn't keep him around for a few hours. Just big right here. No, there's major speculation NHPD were the actual owner of the party duplex. Old safe house maybe, training, I don't know, because it was just down the block from the police department. I saw him on the map. Maybe the location of Lucas's later gambling house after the people who lived there moved. The thought plickens. Earlier, Juliana was talking about Susan, aka Debbie, calling Dorothy in the wee hours of the morning about someone supposedly sleeping in the basement, and what Ken had seen. This following account might have happened to Kurt prior to being found in the ravine. Angelina Reddix. She said she saw two males dragging an unconscious young man down an alley, heading in the direction of that ravine. This was in the early morning hours of Wednesday, the same day that later afternoon Kurt's body was found. Angelina lived on Washington Park near the party duplex. The ravine was about 500 yards from the party duplex. Angelina mentioned what she saw to her husband, and he suggested not getting involved. I'm guessing it's unknown if they even had heard of Kurt being missing yet. So they just thought it was just drunks. The following year, Angelina ran into Ken Sova, Kurt's dad, and told him what she had seen that morning, since it may have been around the time that Susan had called Dorothy, 3:30 a.m., about someone is sleeping on the cot in the basement. It might be Kurt, that quote. Maybe Susan/Debbie/Missy panicked and had some friends get him out of there before Ken could arrive, realizing that they would get in trouble because Kurt had been underage drinking and possibly doing drugs at their party. They then pretended that the person must have left. It's very likely that they were the one that moved Kurt's body to the ravine. The same ravine that Ken had searched on Sunday and on Tuesday. When Angeline ran into Ken and told him what she had seen, this was a year later, remember, Ken told Dorothy. Dorothy called Detective Karras at NHPD. He was still there at that time. He just dismissed her and played her concerns as a mother who can't let go of her dead son. So
this is the same person as Lieutenant Karras.
Yeah. So the NHPD never even looked into her story. Heck, did the NHPD even question Susan / Missy / Debbie or any of the party guests? Susan is possibly Debbie, who with her brother Clayton Sams were primary renters and owners of the duplex. Missy lived on the top floor where the party was. The bottom floor below the street level is the basement. That was a shared basement. It was a huge basement for the two. Maybe Clayton lived in the other half of the duplex. Yep, being a duplex. There was finally a new chief of police at Newburgh Heights PD, Chief Majoy, who reopened the case in 2019. Kurt's brother, Kevin Sova, the last of the family still around, along with 3 cousins, are still working on the cold case. Kevin gave copies of the massive box of research his mom had done to the new chief, hoping to spur him into reopening the case. Here you go. And reinvestigating Kurt's case. Majoy, somewhere around there, went to his alma mater, Tiffin University, and got the professors there and their 100 crime students in on a project with fresh eyes to look at the case, which was really cool. That was pretty good. The following January 2020, CrimeCon in Chicago had their crowdsource event, which was crowdsource. Let's find them. Crowdsolve event with 300 plus true crime enthusiasts, they all signed NDAs because of an active case, etc. And they were offering participants $5,000 reward if they solved the case. Selena Gomez and her mom were part of the 300 because she's a
huge true crime fan. That's just totally cool. Selena Gomez was, we're going to do this, and she was a part of it.
They didn't play her up. They just let her. She was there with her mom. She's just one of the other people there. There was no messing with her. The special guests at the thing were Kevin and his cousins. They were special guests at this thing. And Kevin was very moved at the turnout for his brother's 40-year-old case. Okay, after the event, all the resulting ideas, theories, research was turned into experts to analyze and compile. We haven't been able to find out any available information as to what was discovered or found. It could be still in process, DNA and all that, if there was anything left. As you can see, everything about this case is sus, and police and FBI definitely need to reopen and take another proper look at everything. So back to Juliana for more.
Well, thank you, Barb. As you can see, there are a lot of theories and a lot of rumors and
hinky things
with the police not doing their job or doing their job or this or that. That makes this case even more mysterious and suspicious and crazy and But in their efforts to find out what happened to their son, Ken and Dorothy called the TV show Unsolved Mysteries in a final effort to find answers to the questions that plagued them. Where was Kurt during the 5 days he was missing? Did he die in the ravine, or was his body placed there? And is it really possible for a perfectly healthy 17-year-old boy to die without an apparent cause? The answer to that question, no. Not happening. Even my mom, who's an RN, registered nurse, even says that. No, not possible. The sudden, unexpected death of a teenager is always tragic, but for Ken and Dorothy, the tragedy is compounded by the mysterious circumstances surrounding Kirk's disappearance and then his eventual death. Dorothy wondered why Susan was calling again after she lied so many times. Dorothy did not know whether to believe her or not. Ken and Dorothy believe that Kurt was in the basement at some point. She thinks that he died or was already dead on that cot. The partygoers panicked and got rid of the body in the ravine, like Barb had mentioned earlier. Kurt's mysterious death leaves a trail of disturbing questions in its wake. How exactly did he die? Where had he been for 5 days after he left home? Had he slept in the basement of the duplex? Is there or was there any connection to his death and Eugene's? Years later, Dorothy and Ken, unfortunately, were still and are still looking for answers. Ken says they do not know any more than the day they went out looking for him. He believes that somebody knows exactly what happened to Kurt, and they're just being quiet about it. Dorothy does not think she will come to peace with herself until she finds answers. She says she will always keep searching to the day I'm buried myself. She will never give up because she does not believe that a normal, healthy boy just walks away, disappears for 5 days, and then ends up dead in a ravine. She is certain somebody, somewhere, knows what happened to him. Authorities in Kirk's family believe that somebody from the party that Kirk attended knows what happened to him. They believe that at least 2 people carried his body to the ravine where it was later found. His family considers the party host, Susan, a.k.a. Debbie, a.k.a. Missy, a.k.a. a potential suspect. Well, no,
or at least person of interest.
A person of interest. Actually, they consider her a suspect.
Yeah, suspect because.
When questioned by Dorothy, she initially denied having a party that night. Then she said, oh, yeah, I had a party that night, but Kurt wasn't there. Yeah, I had a party, but Kurt was there, but he left. Yeah. I mean, her stories are constantly changing. Then she added the scenario in where she helped Sam bring Kurt out of the house. Huh? On the same day his body was found. However, later she admitted having one and that Kurt was there. On the same day that his body was found, she called Dorothy and said someone, possibly Kurt, was in the basement. However, he was not there, and then he was found in the ravine 500 yards from the duplex, where the party was held. Okay, so you call her, and then several hours later, his body is found.
Yeah.
Sus? I think so. What do you think?
Mm.
The man in his record store that Barbara talked about earlier who predicted Kurt would be found dead is also a possible suspect. He apparently bragged, like Barb was saying, of having access to bodies flown into Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. He also bragged about removing shoes from the bodies. After apparently leaving a threatening message, the man was reported to police, who was arrested and interrogated him. Police determined he was mentally and emotionally disturbed, but ruled him out as any suspect in Kirk's death. After his release from police custody, from Newburgh Heights, and he has not been seen from or heard from since. That is so suspicious right there. You got him saying he's going to be found dead in 2 days, no cause. Well, hello. And then you also have Susan. I think there's some correlation there. I also think there's some correlation with the police department. I think they're all in cahoots and CYAing each other. That's the only thing that really truly makes sense.
Yeah.
Kurt's family would also like to identify the man named Franco. Kurt apparently got into the van with a few days after the party, and it is not known whether the had any involvement in Kirk's death. Franco, there was another person by the name of Franco who was killed shortly after Kurt's body was found. So, did they have any relation to the Franco that was hurt? We don't know.
He worked in a gas station, and some woman had earlier killed her husband, and then later admitted to a second killing was she killed the guy in the gas station, shot him in the head, and that was Franco.
Yeah. Investigators believe that whoever brought Kurt's body in the ravine was familiar with the area. Kurt's family and law enforcement now believe that somebody who knew the area dumped Kirk's body in the ravine after searchers initially looked there. So essentially, okay, they looked there. Okay, great, we can dump the body now. It's already been looked. They're not going to, it's not going to be sus. Yeah. When you've got several people, not just Kirk's family, but several people who are looking for Kurt, search that very ravine and not see him there, and he would not be easy to miss. And then, woohoo! Suddenly, lo and behold, he appears there. Yeah, that's going to be sus. It's going to, yeah. So, where does the case stand today? Pretty much the same as it stood back in the 1980s. Nowhere. like Barb said, in 2020, nearly 40 years after Kirk's death, like Barb spoke about, Tiffany University and CrimeCon crowdsolving event. Early, the police were trying to get more leads or tips. While both of those efforts generated new ideas and some potential new leads, this case remains unsolved to this very day. Some sources state that the road that Kurt was found on, Harvard Avenue, was also down where Eugene was found, which is, we did find out that yes,
It stretches across the whole town.
across, and it is the same road which both boys were found on. There are theories that Franco, which refers to Crank Franco, a gas station attendant who was killed on December 4th, 1981 at a nearby Soho gas station, was the same Franco that we saw, that Kirk's friend saw in the days prior to Kurt's death. But this is unfortunately unconfirmed. Sadly, Kurt's parents have since passed away. On July 12, 2001, Ken passed away at the age of 68. On December 7th, 2014, Dorothy passed away at the age of 76. Two of his brothers, Keith and Kenneth, have also passed away, all without ever knowing what truly happened to their son and brother. His third brother, Kevin, has been a tour de force, trying to get this case reopened, reinvestigated, and to be able to bring justice for his brother. So he's still looking for answers and hopes that one day he will find justice for Kurt, and that all the answers and everything, what happened, will eventually reveal itself. We truly hope. And we applaud you, Kevin, for doing what you're doing, and we hope that this podcast and all the other podcasts like it will bring some light and share some light onto this horrible story, and maybe one day eventually bring justice to Kurt. We hope. So we thank you out there for listening and taking the journey with us as we delved into this disappearance and murder of Kurt Sova. Again, if you have any tips or information about the disappearance and murder, please call the numbers that we have listed below. And you can also watch the Unsolved Mysteries episode. We have a link to that also listed below. So, be sure to watch that, and be sure to watch the this podcast, of course, and any other podcasts and information. So please call any of the numbers listed below. And remember, you can call and give your information anonymously. Every tip and every bit of information can lead us closer to finding closure for this family and to bring those guilty of taking this young man's life to justice, and bringing the answers that this family has needed for 40 years, finally, to give them final closure. So if you know anything, please call. It's definitely not too late. Next time, we have another riveting case for you. This one is one I have to say is, even at a young age, has always creeped me out. And it's mysterious, it's creepy, it's scary for any young woman. It's the case of Angela Hammond. She disappeared in 1991. Her missing persons case rocked the small town of Clinton, Missouri, when the 20-year-old was abducted from a phone booth in the center of town as she called her fiance while waiting for her ride to pick her up after she'd gotten off work. But more on her and her creepy story. It was another one that was actually presented on Unsolved Mysteries, and when we post hers, we'll have the link for her story on Unsolved Mysteries as well. But yes, it is another riveting case, another creepy case, and it's another one that has taken far too long to resolve, and maybe getting her information out there will resolve that one, like we did today with Kurt. As always, we thank you for your support. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. If you have any cases you want us to cover from your part of the world or country, please send them in the comments below. And also please mention if we're allowed to use your handle or name if we should choose to use your story. So we're happy to take any stories and take a look at them and see if they meet our criteria. That is all that we have for you today. Our next episode about Angela Hammond will be posted in about 2 to 3 weeks. Please, everyone, and I can't implore this, how much I implore this, please, everyone, stay safe out there. And remember to be observant of you and your surroundings and those around you. And those and your loved ones and your friends, be observant and be kind and courteous. So take care out there. Until the next time, I'm Juliana.
I'm Barb.
Signing off. Take care, everybody. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.